Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us for yet another edition of the BBC, the Boardwall Broadcasting Company. We have several topics to go over today. Glad to have you all here with us. But one thing that just cropped up like in the last hour or so is a huge milestone, not just for SBS, but for the COE community in general. And that is the fact that we have reached just over $4 million in crowdfunding. That includes the Kickstarter and all the subsequent purchases made in the online store on the COE website. And this is phenomenal. I don't think that SBS anticipated getting this many dollars from crowdfunding. And the importance and significance of that isn't just the enthusiasm that we as the community that are following the development of COE have put in, but it has now allowed SBS to follow a different path, which I think when they started Kickstarter, they hadn't fully anticipated, and that's to be able to carry on with the development of the game without having to seek a publisher at this moment in time. And why this is a huge thing is because SBS doesn't have to compromise on their vision of how they're building COE. And I think SBS should be congratulated on that, but also the entire COE community should be congratulated as well. It's a huge step, guys. And personally, I'm not a huge fan of cash shops, but in this case, in order to get COE going and having it as a prior to launch only cash shop, I really, really am liking how it's going. So I want to introduce, obviously, faces and names that should be familiar to you. Noslim on my left here, who's also our producer. And, well, I guess the name isn't quite so familiar. It used to be Elbreth, but now it's Finlay today.
Yeah, it's Finlay from last week. Yeah. Cut me some slack here. We'll get to work on that.
I was absent for last.
I think I'm a wood elf for
the last one. Okay, excellent stuff. Let's go ahead and announce the contest right now. And for those of you not familiar with it, what we do is we put a little code up every regular stream, and this week's code for you to make a witty reply to is "The embers in the forge are dimming." And so if you click on the link that's just been posted in the Twitch chat, you'll be able to submit what you think what that stands and refers to. Excellent stuff. I think we're good to start. And Elbreth, I think you had a topic to start with.
Yeah. So the first topic that we're going to start with is Surname Reservation. If you've been living under a rock for the past few weeks, Surname Reservation began on March 1st. And it's been going on since then. And I got a few questions for everybody here about that process and what they've been going through. So the first question is, and this is for everybody, do you feel that this is a significant step along the line of progress or development of COE as a whole? And explain why you say yes or no. So I think I'm going to ask Noslim first. What do you think, Nos, about it?
Of course, it's significant. New L is a real thing now. It's cemented in. I got my surname reservation. I submitted my surname reservation, and I got it approved back in about 10 minutes, which is remarkable. And I've heard around the community that, other people are saying similar stories, how they've gotten their approval back. It says 2 days, but Serpentius has been doing a phenomenal job of personally hand vetting each one of those. Realistically, every member of our community has submitted their surname, and he has meticulously hand approved each and every one almost by himself. I would venture to say that a good 95%, if not closer, 97% of everything that came in went purely through Serpentius, and it's remarkable that he was able to do such a phenomenal job of getting that out. But it's the significance is that, there's my phone blowing up. Somebody's DMing me, and I forgot to turn that off too. I'm just a mess today. But the significance is my family line has started as of this month, which is huge.
All right, and D, what do you think about it?
I kind of like I'm torn on it in terms of the actual reply to the question. For me, the kind of like the technology between putting in a name reservation system is kind of like lost. It doesn't seem like a very kind of like difficult step in terms of the development of the game itself. But what I find kind of like exciting about it is that it's another step along the way to getting closer towards the game, right? It's like account merging. This was always something that was in the future, and now account merging is behind us. We don't have to look forward to that anymore. It's done with. And for me, the same thing, which surname reservation was a step towards bigger things. In and of itself, I don't think it's a huge step. I think it's a huge step maybe for individuals, like Noslim said, where they've kind of like they've got their in-game surname reserved and everything like that. But for me, it's kind of like it's a step towards kind of like the game coming out, and that gets me excited.
Awesome. I guess my own personal opinion on it would be it is kind of exciting for all the reasons that you guys listed. It feels like our characters really do exist now, and we've taken the first step of forging our dynasties, our individual dynasties. On the other hand, it's also sort of okay. I put in my name and clicked enter, and that's done. So it wasn't a super exciting process. But I will say one thing. One thing that I'm really impressed by and I really like is sort of what Nas was saying about how Serp has been going through and checking each name. And I can't think of a game that takes that step to sort of ensure immersion in their game and ensure that the world is actually going to feel like a real world and you're not going to be interrupted by bong hit 69 or whatever. So I think for those reasons, it's pretty interesting.
Although a
All
bong hit wouldn't be much of a distraction for some of us.
All right.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I actually, I've been amazed by two things in that regard. The first one is kind of like the amount of time that the studio is devoting to this. I mean, somebody posted to me a little snippet, when they tried to reserve their surname, and it said, you'll be available to reserve your surname in like 18 days and 14 hours and etc. And they're like, holy, and it's like, to me, it isn't indicative that they're being slow in processing stuff. To me, it resonates more with what Noslim and yourself said, that they're being very, very meticulous in terms of what surnames that they're allowing in here. And it's more because they're trying, at least the impression that I get is they're just very, very proud of their game. This is their baby. And they don't want to have Bong Hit 39 running around.
It was Bong Hit 69.
Bong Hit 69. My bad.
I want to clear that up.
But how do we prevent? We've done that with the surnames, right? Are they going to have a system in place that'll prevent Bong Hit 69 choosing that as his first name? That I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's yet to be determined, but at least it's not going to be one of the options that a new player gets to choose from when he's, browsing through the different families that are previously established in the game. Bong Hit 79, the family of 6, won't be an option on that fucking list. So that's a huge improvement as far as I'm concerned. And I did hit on the process. I think that, like I said, Serp has done a phenomenal job, but people were complaining about the time that it takes for for that approval process to go through. I haven't seen a single instance where it's taken more than half a day, at absolute worst, so I don't think anyone has any grounds to complain there. But what I have seen is people saying, I want Willie Jack Smith, as my name. And I mean, that's just, they clearly stated very common names, famous names. I mean, it's just not going to happen. You need to. They created a surname generator for each tribe to give you an idea of what kind of feel they're looking for, and so it's there's no excuse for why you can't come up with a decent, suitable surname.
Yeah, agreed.
And I'm going to take a business call real quick. I apologize. One second. Y'all go ahead.
All righty. So, while Noz is taking his business call, I think one of the things that came out that got quite a few comments on was the Snipe Hunters dev journal about the cardinal miracle of the second age, and to quote him from that. And it basically, sums up a little bit about Illyria here. Life on Illyria is not static. It is locked forever in a cycle of waxing and waning, ebb and flow, life and death. Not to be feared, but instead remembered. There are many observations during this time of the celestial cycle, whether one seeks balance, purity, or to rediscover life. These traditions stem from an ancient tale passed down from the Second Age. Then a large part of that dev journal kind of like went on about the different observances or festivals that take place on that. But one thing that was kind of like common on this is another thing that I'll quote from there. Is it said, "So long ago, before we even know ourselves, and the people fear the giant ones who stalk the world with wrath and magic, there is a great famine. Starvation and misery find its way to all. There are none who don't feel it. Forest is barren, grassland is shallow, fruit wither on vine and on branch. Only animal who stay are mad, desperate things look at us as food. This suffering of mankind lasts 26 years. So what I'm kind of like taking from that is, I was going to comment just about kind of like, the cardinal miracle of the Second Age Dev Journal, but as I look at it, it breaches out, it kind of like branches out into the wider thing that they had about the Queen's Eye, the comet that comes around every 52 years. And those are every 52 Illyrian years, which in Chronicles of Illyria time is a real life year. And you've got this kind of waxing and waning, which to me is almost like a feast and famine, right? And so it's going to be like, there's going to be 26 years of feast and 26 years of famine. And it's not going to be kind of like as clearly delineated as that, as, one day everything was good and one day everything was bad. It's going to kind of like, I think there'll be kind of like an optimum time and the worst time. And just like kind of like daylight hours, they will each day you don't notice necessarily a difference between, the time of sunrise and sunset, but there's a clear difference between the amount of daylight hours between summer and winter. And I think that's what we're going to get in terms of this waxing and waning. And are we going to be prepared? Are people that, work hard during the feast years, so to speak, the 26 feast years, people who don't work hard during that time, are they going to be penalized during the famine years, or are they going to go out and, go into marauding bands if there isn't enough food available, etc.? What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that Caspian said that really sort of piqued my attention and made me sit up and think for a bit. He said, he was talking about COE, and at one point he said it's almost a simulation more than a game. And I think that fits into what you're saying, D. So I think the game doesn't, or the COE is not going to always care about our hopes and dreams and the things we want to do in the game. We just, we got to kind of accept the fact that there's going to be bad times and game. Like you said, years of famine or years of darkness and whatnot. And yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how the players react to that. Because I don't think that many other games attempt to sort of you know uh influence and manipulate the players as much in that sort of fashion.
Yeah, I think the players are going to make the most of it. They're going to look forward to the seasons. They're going to be heavily interested in participating in them, and maybe even add to them some of their own flair. Some members of my community in Newell was talking about how we're carnival themed, and it's no secret I'm in New Orleans, and the folks love to party down here and all that good stuff. But there's a lot of history behind that as well, and we want to bring some of that history and that carnival and that fun, jive to our own little culture in our community. And we had talked about spice trade and having a carnival season within our community, and festive seasonal events that we do around spices and certain foods, and culture and cuisine, and exploring that side of the and whatever COE presents to us in those types of fashion. We want to have fun with that too, in our own little way. So
Agreed. It's the way that they're kind of like tying this in, it's almost like 6-month long events, in cycles. And that to me is kind of like, again, amazing as to, normally an event in an MMO lasts for, I don't know, anywhere from a couple of days to maybe a couple of weeks. Very often around a Christmas season, they'll call it Festivus or whatever the case might be. And this is far larger and far reaching. And Elbereth, I agree with you. One of the things that I like about Chronicles of Illyria is this whole, fuck you if you didn't prepare kind of
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
It's the game story is going to carry on regardless of what you did. How you survive through it is going to be based upon kind of like your reactions. As I said, you might spend lots of time kind of like preparing for it. You might want to be a raider, but it's interesting. But it all seems kind of like so interwoven. For example, with astronomy, etc. One of the things for sale currently on the store with the Pilgrimage of Renewal event is the orrery. I don't have a picture of it available, unfortunately, but for those not familiar with the term, it looks like the medieval, almost like astro. It's like a globe, but instead of being kind of like purely physical and solid, it's kind of like it's got wires and metal bands that reflect the orbits of the various planets, and you can move them around, etc. And one thing that I noticed, I don't know if it was just kind of like put in there just as a little thing for amusement, but he said it's mostly accurate. And by mostly accurate, it had me think that we might be able to use this orrery to kind of like, track time and predict things and everything, but that maybe there'll be cataclysmic events, that happen with certain alignments and phases, in the stars and the planets that we're not aware of at this moment in time. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
yeah, no, I'm still distracted with my boss deciding to call me at freaking dinner time. But yeah, no, I just want to dial back a little bit. I think that for all their awesome ideas, and I mean the scope and scale and what they're doing is just remarkable. We're all constantly in awe of that. But I it's hard to imagine this, but with all the things that they're trying to introduce, they're still trying to present us with a blank canvas. As hard as that is to believe, I truly believe that they're trying to give us a very vast framework of just about any type play style can come in and start from there and go your own direction. So like we were talking about introducing our own seasonal events in with the seasons. I think that's exactly what they're looking for us to do. I haven't gotten into astrology much. My head's not in the clouds too much. I don't know. Maybe you can chime in there.
I was actually just gonna say that not really. I'm not really a science or math type of person, and so some aspects of this game have me sort of feeling like I'm an ant on a 747 and trying to comprehend the world around me, and not barely even grasping anything about it. So, I mean, what I'm really struck by is just the detail they're going into, and just little things like where the planets are in the universe can impact your destiny. And there's people out there who can understand that and make sense of it. Hopefully I'll be able to hire somebody who can do that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think in a number of other MMOs that I've played, it was the kind of like the image of the heavens and planets and the moons rising and everything have become more and more kind of like spectacular, and kind of like just visually stunning. But the fact that they're really going to truly impact the world of Illyria, I think is just brilliant. And only people that are truly dedicated to astronomy are going to really understand and comprehend and be able to basically prophesize what's going on. We could go on this topic actually for quite a while, but I think what we'll do is we'll leave this one here for now, because I think what we'll do is we'll dedicate a live stream at some time in the future explaining Illyrian time and the seasons and how they work, and time, and the break between daylight and night time, and delve into a little more into astronomy. But talking about kind of like how in depth, for example, astronomy can be. Recently, Snipe Hunter has made a couple of posts, and Caspian's made a couple of comments regarding blacksmithing, which is near and dear to many people in terms of crafting on Illyria. And I think what I want to touch on first on this is Fudge Muffinator, one of our community members, had made a post about how long it might take to create certain things, whether it's buildings or something like that in the world of Illyria. And this was in reference to the limited resources and everything that will be in Illyria. So let me just kind of like read what Snipe Hunter had said for those that weren't familiar with it. Snipe Hunter's words were, "I'm not going to confirm or deny how long it takes to mine or to make a sword here, but here are a few things to consider. 1, there's a finite amount of iron in the world. If mining iron is a quick process, you will run out of iron very quickly. Number 2, mining is more than just getting the iron out of your rock. Very little iron is going to be harvestable on the surface of most biomes. This means that you're going to have to tunnel. So a large piece of the time it takes to mine might actually come not in the extraction, but in the prospecting of the ore in the first place." And then he makes a third point here where he says, "A miner is likely to smelt the ore themselves as well, given the logistical challenges of shipment in Illyria." And I think we're all familiar that there's kind of like, large distances to be covered between settlements. There is no fast travel. And so he goes on to say, if you can only load 2,000 kilos of stuff in a wagon, and that's using a completely random maximum value, would you rather load 2,000 kilos of refined iron or 2,000 kilos of rock containing roughly 2% of iron? So extracting the ore isn't the only time sink involved in mining, even if your prospecting is already handled, at least for the most part. And so, my thinking on this is, when I started to read and kind of like think about that is, well, if you're going to have a guy that's now not only mining, but he's also smelting, would it not make sense then if he's kind of like, if where his mine is kind of like out in the boonies, wherever the prospector found that iron ore vein, does it not make sense that he would then have a smithy come in close to him? Because who wants to ship 2,000 kilos of kind of like precious or valuable ore, into town and run the risk of getting jumped by bandits, etc.? Now, if that's the case, and you've got now a smithy, you're going to have kind of like, subsequent other people coming in there. You're going to have, somebody doing the food and everything. Are we going to see kind of like the boom towns that were kind of like sprung up during the gold rush times in the western United States during the 1800s and early 1900s? Are they going to be towns that grow up and have barons and mayors, and as long as that mine is there and is viable, it'll be there, but then the town collapses? You see many ghost towns out in the West as a result. What are your guys' thoughts and input on that?
Borne says, "Don't take his business away. He needs, we're going to need transporters." I don't know. I'm just giving him shit because he's talking a lot.
To make him feel better, what I might argue is that, okay, yeah, so or let's say, ingots. We mine the ore and we turn it into ingots, and then what you're sort of saying is that all these crafters are going to move in and sort of work those ingots. My argument is that they'll probably ship those ingots out to crafters elsewhere. Because really all you're doing is making it even more easy to rob wealth if you're crafting it on site, or turning it into jewelry or weapons or whatever. Because then hey, why don't they just steal those things instead?
I can see us building infrastructure on the county level, close and near to those resources. Each county is going to have their own set of resources that are highly valued, and it's going to be up to those counties to help build that infrastructure around those resources. Now, as far as whole towns developing around those, I don't know. But I definitely see infrastructure needed to help the gathering of those resources, and maybe refinement to a small degree locally on site. But I think with just like in real world, you have a raw material, you can refine it. And then you can continue to refine it down into finer and finer things, but then your uses for it is limited as you go further and further down. So I can see some very simple refinement being done on site, where those resources are collected, where the counts have put that infrastructure in place. And then maybe further refinement being done in towns at the smithy or at the armor bench, so on and so forth. If that makes sense, I could see them doing the start of the refinement process on site, but maybe doing further refinement in town after it's transported, sort of thing.
I guess I get where you guys are coming from. I think I had envisioned at least the potential of kind of like there being an Illyrian version of Hell on Wheels kind of thing, where the same group kind of like works around and builds a community around a mine, and when that mine is petered out, they move on to the next one kind of thing, and
I think
have their equivalent of brothels and inns and and all kinds of associated stuff with it.
I think that's what's going to prevent that from happening. I think that it's going to take a lot longer than we anticipate to build up a settlement, to build up a town, a village even, if you will. I mean, maybe a hamlet you could pop up rather quickly in the grand scheme of things. But I think, by the time you spent the time to build up an entire town or village, at that point that resource may already be tapped out. And what's the purpose of the location of the town? The thing that kept it thriving is gone now. So that's the flip side of that coin.
Yep, yep. And then there was another community member. His name was Huntsmaster. They had posted, I think Vi had posted about blacksmithing. She had posted 2 images. One was the concept art that one of the SBS artists had done of a smithy and a forge, and the other one was actually how it looks. That particular one looks in game, and it was very, very well done and very, very kind of like true to the original art concept. One of the community members, his name is Huntsmaster, and his full credit goes to him for the image that I'm going to try and post a link to here in the Discord. Hold on a moment. That's actually the image right there. If you can go ahead and open it. He went through, and what had prompted him kind of like drawing these circles around was that a number of people had commented just how awesome looking that forge and smithy was. Wow, it had such an ambiance. It had so much detail in it, and it just looked so nicely developed and everything. And both Snipe Hunter and Caspian had basically commented to the effect of, those aren't there just for decoration. These are the crafting tools that you're going to be needing. These are going to be used in the crafting process of blacksmithing. And although I haven't seen an actual official post about it, I recall one of the devs stating something about that they're going to be moving away kind of like from their initial concept of having mini games for crafting, where, for example, for smithing, if you wanted to make a sword, the quality of it might be dependent upon how well you could trace its pattern with your mouse on a pattern on the screen. And here it seems that they're now going to make it very, very close to kind of like, how involved it will get, I don't know, and we'll try to discuss that in a moment. But when you look at that picture, and again, full credit and thanks to Huntsmaster for putting that. Huntsmaster identified various things in here, from kind of like relatively small details such as, the fact that the floor is made out of stone so that, flying embers, etc., wouldn't start burning on a wood floor, etc. But he identified that there's a forge hearth, a bellows, a crucible tongs, spike anvil and hammer, flat tongs, beaked anvils, buckets, swage blocks, piece molds, quench tanks, whetstones, and there were a couple of others. And he actually explained what each one of them do. So I would, from his the depth that he went into, I can only imagine that he follows blacksmithing either professionally in real life, or he's kind of like, a very, very avid one. One couldn't really call him an amateur at
enthusiast.
but a real enthusiast on it. How involved do you think, based upon what we've seen here and based upon the hints, they weren't confirmations from Caspian and Snipe Hunter that all of these things would be used? How involved do you think crafting in general and blacksmithing in particular will be? And do you think this is a better step to moving away from the kind of like trace a pattern on your monitor thing, or do you think it's a good step or a bad step?
Andy, I was able to get the image up for a little bit on stream while you were talking about all that. So it wasn't pretty, like with our fancy flash sexiness and then cut scene and smoke and pop. None of that happened. It was ugly, but I got it up. So there was all of that, all of the circles we were able to see them while you were talking through them. And what I think of is I don't know if anybody here watches the History Channel or anything silly like that. Forged in Fire. I mean, sometimes I get really drunk and that show gets really interesting, But after a long day at work and far too many shots of scotch, I start to find that really super interesting. But it's really there's a lot that goes into forging weapons and armor, and you know what was that Kingdom Come Deliverance that just came out recently?
I was just going to mention that. Yep.
And the crafting, and you know, you have to, it's not just, you know, a recipe book. You have to actually grab the ingredients and mix them in the cauldron, and flip an egg timer and make sure you hit it just right before you know, add the next ingredient. And so there's, you know, you gotta do it just right. And I can see that happening with regards to blacksmithing as well, if they implement it correctly. You know, you have to temper that steel, and you know, if you temper it, you know, at the wrong time, you know, it's too brittle and it's fragile, and it reduces the value of it, because, you know, I don't know how that's going to work in game. But obviously, if you got a weapon that's getting dull every time you take a swing, then proficiency might get affected, so on and so forth. But they can definitely implement something other than tracing something cookie cutter on the, and not to say that that's a terrible idea, because that is an interesting way of introducing skill into a crafting system. But something such as blacksmithing, I think they're definitely going the right way in introducing all these possibly different elements of, you know, the actual crafting of it itself. But I wouldn't be too upset if we saw some of those little mini games like that, just to keep it interesting for different aspects of it. For maybe wrapping a hilt or something, you have a little mini game that, you know, to introduce a final design on the finished product or something like that. I definitely think that could be interesting, and I don't know that they've completely taken it off the table. You know, people were talking recently, you know, well, I thought this was the way it was going to be. You know, they mentioned that several months ago as a concept, and that's what it was. It was a concept, and I think that they're definitely moving in a different direction for the better.
Yeah, I would agree overall with what Nas was saying. You know, I was part of me was kind of sad that the mini games were sort of making an exit, just because I thought it was a neat idea, and that it was still a very original idea. On the flip side, them going in this other direction, it opens up other possibilities, and it's sort of interesting about like in most other games, when if you can't craft something, it's not because of any sort of like lack of knowledge or anything. It's usually because you haven't leveled up enough, or you don't have the perks to do it. um Whereas here, you actually kind of have to know how to blacksmith, or how to do whatever it is you're trying to do. You have to have that background knowledge, and it sort of facilitates players sort of interacting more with each other. And it actually makes apprenticeships a real idea, where somebody who's a master, who knows what they're doing, teaches somebody who's just started and sort of wants to get into it. And additionally, I think it sort of gives a bit more credibility to professionals, to somebody who's a blacksmith and that's what they do in COE. That's sort of, it's a barrier to entry, and not just anybody can sort of decide they want to be a blacksmith and bam, crank out a sword. It takes a while to get to the point that they've gotten to. So I think it's for the better overall.
Excellent. Yeah, I think we can all be in agreement that we're really looking forward to finding out more about the crafting system, and it looks like they're going to be tackling blacksmithing first. But I just get amazed even when I read, and whereas I personally have very little interest in this particular aspect of it, but I just look at what they're looking at doing in regards to beekeeping and things like that, with the different species of bees and the migratory patterns and being able to crossbreed bees. I'm like, holy shit. It's like, people who want to do and follow what they want to do and follow are going to be able to do so in a kind of like engaging manner. And I think, again, that's one of the really attractive aspects of COE. Elb, if you want to start looking at the contest entries and pick one that you think most represents the solving of the code of the embers in the forge are dimming. Which ones do you think there might be the winning one for us there?
No pressure.
Yeah, none
No
whatsoever. Yeah, I've totally spent a lot of time reading these over. You know what? Because it's me, I think I'm gonna go with the stupid one.
Well, you're not
Congratulations.
supposed to say that out loud.
Yeah. Well, no, but I think it's funny. It tickled my funny bone. And I said, so the response who said, "Turn it down for what?" as my vote on the best quote of the night. So,
And who was that?
that's a great question. I'm not sure how I say that. How do you? I'm not sure how you link the comment to the actual person who made it. I'm not seeing that.
I think their name should show up in there. If not, what we'll do is we'll get in touch with the person. Our regular contest runner is unfortunately absent this evening, and we'll find out who that was that made the comment.
Here,
And,
actually, I figured it out. Give me 1 second.
Okay, cool.
Our answer. All right, that was Unshackled Jester.
Alrighty, excellent. I'll be getting in touch with them, and they have won either a 100 EP or a guild token or a villager token. That'll be their choice. Excellent stuff. Alrighty, I think that about wraps up this edition of the BBC. Thank you to everybody for coming and joining in and making your comments and keeping the chat lively. And we'll look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time when we'll have another stream going and some more COE comments. Take care, everybody.
Take care. Thanks, guys.
Guys, have a good one.